All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
Hello, welcome back to the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. We previously released this episode with Gregg Schumacher and how he has fought the left for decades, what he's doing now to fight back, to legally make police and others in law enforcement be faithful to their oaths and the law under the Constitution. And you would think it would be simple, but it's not that simple, really, it turns out. Anyway, so when we talked in the initial body of this discussion, I considered how things went down in Portland, and I brought it up, and I said, hey, you know, Antifa, BLM, they got together to violate the rights of people who are innocents by holding an armed checkpoint, like they were, I don't know, ISIS or something. They literally had on their person, and it's okay to pack rifles and open carry rifles in Multnomah County, Oregon, Portland. And they had AK-47s and an AR-15 that they used to intimidate people and keep them in line and not to allow anyone else to be on the street when they were walking down the street in their parade without a permit, their protest. And there were a couple of people who got beaten up by Antifa and BLM and intimidated, obviously being held at gunpoint. This is so outrageous as to be obvious that something should have been done. But in fact, Joe Hall, who is in a previous edition of the Adult in the Room podcast, lost his lawsuit. And I talked to his constitutional law attorney and I said, hey, you know, what happened? You know, how do you lose that? And he gave me literally chapter and verse about it. And so when Greg talked about it and said, we're gonna bring lawsuits against these people. And I said, well, I don't know if that's going to work because look what happened to Joe Hall over here. And another man was jacked up by the same bunch and he was beaten. Now, I'm sorry, but that is never okay. Hello. And they called the cops. And in fact, the cops knew about that particular checkpoint because it was on social media and they monitor all the social media. Well, anyway. Lost his case. Joe Hall lost his case. And so it was with Seattle's Chop and Chaz, how people were denied their rights of freedom of movement, First Amendment rights to associate with people with whom they chose by a bunch of leftist commies who took over a swath of Seattle. And so, oh, yeah. And then all of the elected officials said, oh, can we get you anything? Would you like some free electricity? Would you like some water, some food, perhaps? We'll get you anything, commies. Well, you know what? That was wrong. But the people who tried to take them to court lost their cases. So this is different. These cases are different from that which Gregg Schumacher is now suing these people. And I tell you, there's a portion of the law that doesn't require the police to respond. But in Gregg's case, he's going after their oath. He's going after what they've done to violate that which they promised to do to safeguard, this is a quote, safeguard lives and property, to protect the innocent against deception, the weak against oppression or intimidation, sound familiar? And the peaceful against the violent or disorder, to respect constitutional rights, equality, and impartiality, among other things. This is all part of their oath that they take, law enforcement takes. And they're breaking it right and left. And you know why? Because they are just following orders. And he wants to make them pay. Sorry. When you're doing something that's obviously wrong because you're under orders not to go after these lawless commies, I'm sorry, you need to be on the hook for that. And cities need to be on notice that we're going to sue individuals who take these oaths and other entities that oversee that. So he just wanted me to make sure that you knew the difference. And so he said, hey, could you please clarify? We talk about it a couple of times in this interview. And I said, dude, I don't know. I don't know if you can do that because of my experience with these two individuals and others who've been intimidated and seized upon, beaten by Antifa, and either nothing happened or they got found at fault. And it's just like, has the world keeled off its axis? What the heck is going on here? Whatever happened to going after the lawless? Well, lots has happened in the law. And now Gregg is saying, okay, all right, this doesn't work. Fine. We will sue them for breaking their oaths. I'm all for it. Whatever puts these guys on notice, whatever gets these communists who are trying to break down societal norms, break down civil society, I'm all for it, as long as it's legal, as long as it's something that helps society as opposed to tearing it down. So I want you to review our discussion or re-listen to our discussion with that in view. And yeah, thanks. And by the way, would you please share this episode? Will you please tout it on your social media? Would you please be a supporter? And by that, I mean, just please share and subscribe. Because obviously we need more people. We need more people in our tribe. Thank you. It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. Welcome to the Adult in the Room podcast. I'm Victoria Taft. How are you? It's been a minute. I had surgery, and so I had to, recover a little bit. It doesn't look too bad, I have to say, so life's good. Well, look, this is a program today about fighting back, about wresting our cities back from out of control, malevolent chaos agents. And those people are the masked people who claim nobility of free speech and protest. We have rights without according anyone else their rights of freedom of movement, freedom of speech, freedom of association. Those are all gone when the mob takes over. In fact, it's the heckler's veto with bear spray, explosives, and screeching. Lots of screeching. Looting at San Francisco stores is now called reparations. LA looting jewelry stores is now noble. Portland has tolerated this behavior for a very long time, longer than these other places. Notably exempt from that list is San Francisco, which is slightly longer than Portland. They showed us the way in Portland, Oregon, and I lived there for a long, long time. It was my hometown. So how many times can you knock off a Louis Vuitton, turning it into a Louis Vuitton? How many times can you burn down an Apple store or make fires around it? The whole city of Portland has been a freaking dumpster fire for a long, long time. Now, these same protesters are calling for the end of Israel, anti-Semitic, radical chic, back in style, the whole thing. And we've got growing numbers of people in this country who think that's just totally fine. But of course, it's not, because they're the fascists. This is a problem, and we need to rectify. We need to make sure that we right the wrong. And now perhaps we do have an equalizer. The group Restore Law and Order is a group formed 1 year ago to sue the crap out of the politicians for letting this happen. Now, you go, because obviously the other way hasn't necessarily worked. So what you can do, we hope, what we're going to talk about today is how this group is suing politicians to force them to comply with the law, with their oath, and with ethics and probity. That's all we ask. It's really not too much. Hey, I know. How about if you do your job? That would be really great. So Gregg Schumacher wants to make sure that what happened to him in Portland in 2005 to 2007, 2008 doesn't happen to anyone else. Schumacher announced the group's formation June 2023 so that what happened to him didn't happen to anyone else. And you'll see coming up in a moment what happened to him. Now in Portland, where Gregg had his 112-year-old business, the mob decided that they didn't like what he was selling. They did not give their approval. And they used the heckler's veto and broke the law multitudinous amounts of times to drive him out. And he'll tell a story. And he'll tell you what he's doing so that other people don't suffer the same fate. In Portland, this lawless city, places along the West Coast, places where there is blue in the mayor's office, blue, far, far left. Murders have gone up like a shot. Businesses are reported, at least in Portland, 80% fall off after the 2020 riots. That summer of love, we were told, that was so vaunted and so noble. Hundreds of millions of dollars in damage, destroyed businesses, vandalism. It's 63% of the businesses in Portland. 2,600 businesses at least have picked them up and they've left Portland since the 2020 riots, or they've gone out of business. Portland isn't the only place, but it's the chief place people look at and they go, hey, maybe that's what Donald Trump was talking about when he said, hey, that's a, asshole country. Of course, I'm joking, but a lot of people often say to me, Portland, I've totally given up on that place. Well, somebody's got to fight back for these people. Welcome, Gregg Schumacher. He's the one guy who's trying to fight back. It's good to see you again. Appreciate you coming on. Hi.
Hi, Victoria.
I'm
How are you?
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Doing great. I'm doing better these days. Far away from Antifa. Not far enough, but, far enough for, spitting distance anyway. So one of the things I wanted to find out, of course, is this organization that you head and why it is that you've decided all these years later after this happened to you to get a start on equalizing the person's voice, the business person's voice, and getting them a hearing in the courts.
Okay, so my organization is called Restore Law and Order. The website is restorelawandorder.com. And what I decided to do about 4 years ago when the riots started again in Portland, Oregon, and across the country, right after the George Floyd incident, I started gathering evidence across the country of all crimes that happened to businesses and individuals where the law enforcement did not respond to the incident. So in other words, what I've done is gathered all this evidence that's happened to different businesses and people where they called law enforcement because something was happening to them that was illegal, and law enforcement did not show up. That's one set of circumstances. Or the second set is they showed up, and once they got there, they did nothing. Okay? So we have thousands and thousands of incidences just in Portland, throughout the state of Oregon, but also New York, Seattle, etc. This is happening where you have blue cities, sanctuary cities, and states. Okay? Which again, Seattle, New York, Minneapolis, etc. These are the places that apply. So, right. So what we're doing, I'm finding that over the years, ever since the incident happened to me 17, 18 years ago at Schumacher Furs, that the businesses and the business people, the owners and property owners, have been making a huge mistake, okay? And they're still making it, all the way from the millionaires to the billionaires. And the mistakes that they're making, and this is why you're not seeing any resolution to these problems. What are the problems are riots, illegal protests, violence, crime, COVID damage. This is what's going on. And it keeps going on. It keeps escalating. And so what my company is doing is we are holding accountability to the cause of the problem. The cause of the problem is not criminals, okay? That is not, we always have crime groups. We've had crime groups forever, okay? So that's not really the problem. The problem that I want to get back, touch on what I was just saying about the businesses, the mistakes that they're making. So the mistakes that they're making is they're trying to convince existing politicians that are in office to change their ideology and start enforcing laws and existing policies. Okay? That's what Phil Knight, all of them, that's what they're doing. Right? They're totally screwing it up. Okay, because that's never going to work because these people are right, far left, radical leftist lunatics that are running these cities and states, and that's a fact.
Can I just insert something before you go on? And that is, there are radical groups. They're communists for the most part. That's where their end goal is.
Yeah.
And the fight is never the fight. It's just about the revolution. They will continue to be chaos agents. There will be no rhyme or reason for what they do. They just seek to disrupt. And so trying to rationalize what they're doing or to reason with them is not going to work. You have to hold them to the same rules that you are held to. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And so what you've got is you've got all these groups of people in California, Oregon, New York, groups of businesses constantly gathering together, trying to convince, if you really look at this, it's true, it's a fact. They're trying to convince existing politicians to change their mind. And these existing politicians are lunatics. They're radical leftists, and they're getting paid to destroy America, okay? They're getting compensated to destroy America much more than they're getting compensated in their political positions, okay? And this is by the Soros groups and et cetera, okay? They're globalists, if I may, all right? Which are out to destroy us. The governors and the mayors are just little puppets to these big globalists, okay? All right, so if you understand that, that's not going to work, and that's what everyone keeps trying to do. The second thing is, how do you replace these people and get people that will do good in office? Uphold constitutional law, city ordinances, state constitutions, et cetera. Well, you would say, well, we'll just vote them out. You can't vote them out. You can't vote them out. So everyone needs to wake up. Hello, America, wake up. You can't vote these people out because you have election fraud. And election interference.
Incumbents always get reelected. I mean, it's almost impossible to get an incumbent out of that. Take it, irrespective of any of the shenanigans on the side.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and so you can't vote them out because of the election interference, right? And also because of the indoctrination of the voter. You have these people for the last 25, 30 years have been indoctrinated from grade school and our colleges and everything else. And these people are going to keep voting the same people in sanctuary cities. I can prove it. For example, in Portland, Ted Wheeler, our mayor, got voted in twice. This is after he screwed up the first term. He got voted in twice. Kate Brown, our past governor, she got voted in twice. Okay.
Well, wait a minute. I know I found great problems with how Wheeler did his job, but he was running against a chick from Antifa. So, I mean, you had the worst of both worlds represented in the candidates available to vote for.
So and another thing I want everyone to be aware of, I hear the news, it drives me crazy all day long, all the news, whether, I don't care if it's Newsmax, I don't care if it's Fox News, with Steve Bannon or whatever. They talk about protesters. That's what we see. They're
chaos agents.
Okay. No, they're terrorists.
Well, I tell you what, put a pin in it right there. Oh, they are terrorists. You would know because this is what happened.
I know more than any of these newscasters know because I lived it. I lived it for 2 years. Okay. And I mean, you saw it, Victoria, every day. Okay. But I want to establish something here real quick, okay? I want to establish 3 things. Number one, what is protest, okay? Now, I'm going to refer to my notes, if I may. A protest is an expression or declaration of objection, disapproval in opposition to something a person is powerless to prevent or avoid. The peaceful gathering of a group of people to make social change. That's what a protest is. That's not what's going on here, okay? Now, let's talk about what terrorism is, okay? Because this is what exactly hitting the nail on the head, okay? Terrorism. It's the use of violence against non-combatants to achieve political or ideological aims, intentional violence during peacetime.
You can't tell from or you can see our video, I know, as we watch, but it gets worse. This went on every day. There were people literally screaming at your customers. They were little old ladies in their fur coats and their outerwear or whatever they bought from you.
We had 2 people that had heart attacks. Woman, that they surrounded her when they left the store and had a fur coat on. They'd have 40 people surrounded right in the middle of the street. Police didn't even come. Police would not even come. The police did absolutely nothing. The governor did nothing. President Bush did absolutely nothing. I went to him, okay? The mayor, the city council, I went to endless city council meetings. They did nothing, okay? And they still
it was worse than nothing.
And now
it was worse than nothing.
Worse than
they told you to leave.
So one more thing. Well, just a minute. I want to tell you what terrorists said. I will give you the definition if I may, okay? So a terrorist is a person who uses unlawful violence and intimidation, especially against civilians, in the pursuit of political aims. I'd say that's exactly what's going on in America right now. That's what went on with me. And that's what's been going on with all these riots and this violence. This is not protest, okay? This is terror, okay? And so everyone needs to get their head straight around this. Protest is the light, fluffy word for this. It's not a protest. Now, if a protester is in the midst of this violence, okay, then what he needs to do is remove himself from that group of people and go to where there's peaceful protesters if he wants to be a protester. Otherwise, he's just standing there. He's part of all this terrorist action. He's part of the terrorism.
There were people, they were camped out in front of your store.
Victoria, they were camped out in front of my house. You were camped out in front of my house.
I believe you.
Okay.
I believe they would come out. Oregon is the incubator for a wide array of very radical communistic protest agents and chaos agents. We had in Oregon the Earth Liberation Front, Animal Liberation Front, Earth First, and all of the anti-animal research people. And what would happen is eventually the animal research people got run out of town. ELF and ALF were rolled up, and those people were put in federal prison because they were plotting violence and indeed carried out violence. Indeed, there was really nothing that would have led police to assume that anything happening in front of your shop would have been peaceful based on what had happened with ELF and ALF firebombing SUV stores. They veil fire at a big ski resort. That went up in flames. There were graffiti.
I now just, aside from this, just so you know, I have 2 other organizations since I met you, Victoria, here as well. Okay, I have 2 other organizations. One is called SAR Solutions, SARE Solutions. The website is sarsolutions.com. And I also have another company that's called counters animal rights groups and extremist groups. Okay, so both of my organizations. If you go to sarsolutions.com, you'll see it. So I started these organizations about 8 years ago, and what I do is I gather animal usage industries together besides the fur industry. That's where I'm from. In other words, beef, poultry, pork, leather, animal, horse racing, rodeos. I've gathered these people together and these companies together. And what we do is I've developed strategies and litigation to stop all this nonsense with the radical animal rights groups. Okay. Animal rights is different than animal welfare. Animal rights groups, animal welfare is to do good for animals and care for animals. The animal rights movement is about, eliminating animals for entertainment, food, clothing, and animal research, those 4 things. Okay. So they don't want humans to be using animals for, you can't eat meat, you can't wear leather, you can't take prescription drugs, Okay. That's what an animal rights movement is. People still don't understand it because they don't inform themselves. Okay. And the media, the biggest problem we have with all of this stuff that's going on is the media. Because the media is out there giving disinformation and misinformation about everything that's going on. Okay? Obviously, in today's world, that's what happened to me.
How do you hold their feet to the fire, the politicians' feet to the fire with your organization?
Well, here's what you do. So we know that voting them out is not going to work. Okay. I think we might have a separate situation with Trump. Okay. Because if he can overwhelmingly get enough votes
In the right places.
to counter the fraud that will be going on. Okay. That's how it'll win. The interference is still going to be
already
there.
happened. It's already happening.
I don't know what that interference is.
In a New York courtroom.
Yeah, it's already happening. It's right. Right. So to restore law and order, what we're doing is this. We're doing a lot. We have a whole different approach to this. So we feel that the government officials in the sanctuary cities and states are accountable for the riots, the illegal actions, the homeless problems, huge on the homeless, okay, COVID damage, etc. And the reason we say that is because they're violating federal constitutional law, okay? You have to understand that all government officials took a personal oath to uphold the constitutional law. So a governor, a mayor, a city councilman, a police officer, etc. So they all took a personal oath to uphold the law. Now, in the Constitution, there's a couple of different statutes, one in Title 42, Section 1983, 1985. You can read all this on our website, okay, restorelawandorder.com. But there's statutes in there that say this. I'm just going to verbally just tell you, but not reading it, okay? It says, like Title 42, Section 1983, 1985, and 1986, they say, all government officials took a personal oath to uphold the U.S. constitutional law. If they fail to do so, they can be held responsible and accountable for the economic and financial damages that they cause entities in a federal court of law.
Have people done this before?
Well, I'll tell you this. Under that statute, there's been 785 mayors in the United States sued. Some were successful, some were not, and some settled. Not all of those were successful, but there have been successes, yes.
That's
okay.
Heartening.
One of my attorneys just sued Kate Brown successfully. Cool. So, personally.
For letting all the prisoners out? For letting all the murderers out?
No, this had to do with COVID stuff. Yeah. But anyway, the whole point is, yes, they can be sued. Most people don't do it because I don't know why they don't do it. I'm the only guy in America that's doing this. That's why I have national attention. So what we're doing is we're gathering businesses. I'm going to go a little deeper in this.
Yeah, please.
May I, Victoria? Okay. So what we're doing is we're gathering the businesses and individuals that have incurred economic damage due to riots, illegal protests, homelessness, COVID damage, and we're gathering these people together, and we're doing what is called multi-plaintiff lawsuits, which is similar to class action lawsuits against cities, states, and government officials personally, those three entities, okay? So, and what we're doing is we're suing them and holding them accountable. Now, why are we suing them? Okay, I'm going to give two of the main reasons why we're doing it. Number one is to get reimbursement back in the pockets of the business owner, okay? The second reason is, probably the most important reason is get ready for this and follow me on this, is to set a precedent for future lawless candidates not to run for political office, knowing that they will encounter the same legal and financial and reputational damages that their predecessors had. So in other words, when we sued Ted Wheeler and we sued Kate Brown in Oregon, for example, and COTEP, okay, what we do is we bring this to national news, because remember, I have all that evidence again over the last 4 years. So I have all the evidence of all the stuff that they want. Okay, so we bring all that and we put it into national news and we shame them over and over and over again.
Some people are beyond shame, Greg. So let's face it.
Some people are beyond shame, but we will expose them from all the illegal actions that they've done. Okay, and we'll hold them accountable in the limelight and keep doing it. Okay. Once we do that, we hopefully, but by theory, if I may, or actually being realistic, we will reputationally destroy them. Okay.
That works for me.
And also their careers.
I'm so over these people. Forgive me. I know I'm supposed to sound like the...
Well, no, it's about time everyone's over. I mean, even the liberals are over them, okay? You know who's going to get it? Okay, so we sue them, and when we sue them, what we do is it sets a precedence for future candidates and go, hey, I want to carry on the same crap that Biden did, or that the mayor in Oregon did, or the mayor in, or the governor in California did. Well, they're going to think twice before they do that, because they're going to look at what just happened.
What I hear you saying is that you will engage in lawfare.
Yeah.
Yeah. For the goose.
We're all accountable for the illegal actions. Okay. Now, there's also ethical stuff going on here and everything else, but this is what we're doing. And so we want to get reimbursement back for the businesses, right? Which is billions of dollars just in Portland, billions of dollars. Here, let me tell you what the damages are. There's two main damages, okay? The first damage is devaluation of commercial, industrial, and residential property, mainly commercial and industrial. So all the buildings in Portland, Fox Tower, for example, look at all the buildings in San Francisco. Let me give you some statistics. The devaluation of the buildings, of the commercial property in San Francisco in the last 4 years is 92%. Okay? In Chicago, it's 91%. In Portland, it's 87%. In Seattle, it's a similar 87%. So what we're saying is, if a building was worth $10 million 4 years ago, it's now worth $1 million. If you can even sell it or lease it. Okay? This is a disaster. Now, that's one damage. The other damage is business. That's COVID also, yes. Okay? But that's just from riots and, illegal protests, homelessness. These homeless camps come in, go surround a business, no one wants to come to their restaurant anymore.
May I just say, the U.S. Supreme Court recently had oral arguments and briefs were filed on the Boise decision that allowed in the Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals area the ability for people to camp wherever if these entities, the cities and counties and states, had no place to put the homeless. And so as a result of that rationale, which is hackneyed and bizarre and unknown to humankind heretofore, what happened was the cities would just allow them to do anything that they wanted, and they would, because they didn't want to have to go count the beds and count the homeless. And it was a product of laziness, but furthermore, it was beyond that. It was a choice. It was a choice that they wanted these people to be allowed to sleep wherever, because, it would be inhumane to not do that for them. So in other words, instead, what they did was they allowed them to park on the sidewalks, park on freeway off-ramps, place themselves in parks, and allow them to, in addition to the bad homeless decision this was, allowed them to take drugs in the open. And that absolutely gave rocket fuel, infused the homeless problem with rocket fuel, so that there were certain, as Gregg mentioned, sanctuaries. And in these sanctuaries, these people were allowed to take fentanyl, meth, LSD, heroin, any, I don't know how much LSD is out there, maybe a lot, I don't know. But all those really hard drugs, because they had decriminalized those things. So there were literally open air drug markets. In Seattle, there are literally cartel crack dealers and fentanyl dealers living in the tent cities just to make it easier for these guys, after they get their disability checks from the government, to come over and cash in over at the other tent a couple of feet away. This is a serious problem. And as a result of their stupidity, their belief that they could change human behavior, they have allowed this to happen. So Gregg's suing them for it.
Right.
More power.
Right. Well, you have to understand, here's what my philosophy is on this, okay? Real quick, okay? And people don't talk about this. This all starts at the family unit.
Sure.
Okay? This is where it happens, okay? Because if you look at, I use the cookie theory in my explanation. The cookie theory is you got two kids, a daughter and a son. The son goes in the cookie jar, gets chocolate chip cookie once, gets away with it because he's not disciplined. He goes back the next day and gets two. Goes back the next day and gets three because mom and dad are not disciplined. Okay. Then he tells his sister, hey, look, I'm getting cookies, and you can get a cookie too. Then the sister does. Pretty soon they're getting 10 cookies out of the cookie jar. Okay. So what's happening with Schumacher, my Schumacher Furs, my company, which is the oldest fur company in America. Okay. And we still are a legal entity. So we're 124 years old, I think. Okay. And we still do some active business, but we don't have retails, standing or whatever like that. But what's going on here is that you've got these not holding accountability or consequences. Okay, like at the Schumacher protest, right at the beginning when it started. Okay, when they start doing illegal activity, the Portland police and the FBI and everyone else, they should enforce the laws and prosecute it. Okay? This guy right here on the video, that cop is handing out business cards to the terrorists. That cop right there, they're saying, if Schumacher's bothering you anymore, call me. I'm not kidding you. He said, I ran out of business cards. He went back to his car to get more business cards. This is insanity.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with giving out your cards, but the problem was at that point in time, they were the ones making the trouble. And indeed, after this whole thing blew up, you had Randy Leonard as city commissioner, who's, I don't know what he's doing these days.
Yep. Total radical. Potter was governor. He's total.
Well,
Potter should be in jail.
Those guys, it didn't take long after Gregg's family store was run out of town. Randy Leonard told him to leave town. Well, it's in the writing. Leave town because we can't protect you. And indeed, just one thing you need to remember, and you probably know all this because you've got attorneys and everything, but the city is not required to send cops to keep you safe. There's no law that says that they have to keep you safe or they have to provide safety because in a particular area of town, it is particularly, it's full of, wackadoodle-doos and you feel unsafe. They don't have to do squat.
No, but they do have to uphold constitutional and city ordinances.
They do, but they're not required. For example, I happen to have it on the.
Well, I would say one of the requirements would be for them to enforce their oath that they're a police officer.
What I just said might shock a lot of people. And what happened was as a result of a guy in Portland, because every stupid thing happens in Portland, and we're the beta of everybody else's stupid ideas. I say I don't even live there anymore, but it's my hometown. So he was jumped. He was blocked by Antifa and BLM. He was then beaten. He pulled a gun, grabbed his gun, and he didn't do anything with it. He didn't have his finger on the trigger, nothing. And no cops would come. And as a result, he said, well, I'm going to sue the cops. And he couldn't because he had no right. His attorney told me that. His attorney, who's a constitutional law attorney, very well respected, lots of letters after his name. And he says, no, there's no requirement that the cops keep you safe. There's absolutely none. So but why wouldn't they have come to that area? They knew BLM and Antifa were there. And by the way, it was an armed checkpoint by Antifa and BLM. Hello. And they were refusing to allow people to go onto the street. And the cops did nothing. And they weren't required to do anything.
Well, so what you have here, not just with my situation, but all across America, what you have here is you have no accountability being held at the very beginning. That's the cookie jar theory. In other words, okay, that's the problem. So they don't hold accountable at the very beginning, and then it escalates. It gets worse and worse. And this is what's happened in Portland. This is what's happening in America. America is a disaster because of escalation of law enforcement not doing their job. That's what it is. It's not because there's always criminals. Okay, yeah, the criminals are part of it. But my whole point is, then they come back, and the law enforcement comes back, well, we can't handle it. It's too big. Well, it's too big because you allowed it to happen from the very beginning. That's why you can't handle it now. That's why you need National Guard to come in, like Trump tried to do in Portland. But was
of course, they blamed all the riots on President Trump. Hello, really? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, another thing I wanted to mention, just to get it in there, is that this is a nonpartisan lawsuit. It doesn't matter if you're liberal Okay, because you have to really. It doesn't matter if you're liberal, conservative, Catholic, Jewish, black, white. It doesn't matter. Everyone out there has constitutional rights. We're trying to protect your personal constitutional rights. Okay, and you need to stand up. People need to stand up. The problem that we have, another problem that we have, is the conservatives and the Republicans. They're the problem. Okay, now, I hate to say it, you guys, I'm a total conservative. I have traditional values all the way. Okay, but they are pussies. Okay, they have no backbone. Okay, they don't do shit, and they can't. The guys that have their act together are the liberals.
If I say something mean, they're going to call me mean. They're going to say I'm a bad word.
Well, but the radical liberal left, they know how to unify. They know how to gather together. They all have the same purpose, and they go direct. Look at them against Trump. Attack. Okay, all of them together. Okay, we don't do that. We're off. The Republican Party's all doing all different things. The conservatives are sitting back. Gee, I don't want to get involved. Okay, including Phil Knight and the rest of them. Okay, and I'm going to say it right out loud because Phil Knight
had a former. Oh, he is the founder of Nike, co-founder of Nike.
He's the founder of Nike in Oregon. It's an Oregon company. You made $56 billion, okay, because it's an Oregon company. You should give back and actually support our organization, okay? Same with the other businesses, okay? Shame on all the businesses that are not supporting us. There's over 40,000 businesses, Victoria, just in Portland Metro, that have had financial damage because of all these things I've mentioned, the riots and everything else. 40,000. And the statistics you gave at the beginning, you gave off our website, 2,600, what do you say, 2,600 businesses
63% of the businesses have been vandalized or they're harmed.
Yeah, well, actually, it's more than that. About 85% have been, okay. And the 91, and also many more than 2,600 downtown businesses have left, many more than 20. That's an old statistic. I'm sorry, because I saw it on our website and that's where you got it. So the whole point is, I think the only answer to the problem is what I'm doing. I'm not saying that out of arrogance at all. There is no other solution. Okay, and I ask everyone, even on national newscasters and everyone else, I ask, what other solution do you come up with without holding accountability to the government officials? No one comes up with anything. And if there was a solution, they would have used it by now.
So you're saying suing individual lawmakers.
It's the only way to do it. If that doesn't work, then
well, what do you do? I mean, and yes, we all do worry about that.
Because that means our Constitution doesn't work. If you can't sue under the Constitution, then our Constitution doesn't work. Right now, it's not working.
I agree with that. I agree that it's not working.
In many areas.
So you're saying that under, whatever state or federal statutes, and as well as constitutional constitutional precepts, that you could sue. But I think there might be something even more intricate you could do because, if you did something locally, you also run the risk of running right smack into the idea of these folks who have liability. They have absolute liability insurance, and there's I'm looking for the verbiage, but in my head because I'm forgetting it right now. But I mean, the city, county, state, they'll pick up the tab for any damages that they.
Well, this is my whole point. The people who are going to reimburse the businesses are the insurance companies through the state and the city.
I know. Well, that's right. And then guess what happens? They stop insuring people. This is a problem. And it's Portland's problem for allowing it to happen. I'm totally on board with you. I'm just still looking for the ability, the legal ability to sue these individuals when they're being covered under an umbrella policy by these folks at the city and the county and all the other bizarro entities like Metro and all those other places.
Well, cities and states get sued all the time.
This is true. And the left does that a lot. It's true.
Okay. Right. And personally, there are personal lawsuits. I mean, a police officer gets sued personally. Have you ever seen that happen?
They usually have the ability not to be sued. I mean, it does happen. Some entities do. Some counties don't.
Well, it happened with the George Floyd thing.
They were found criminally liable for that. That's different than civilly liable. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But police officers have been sued. As I said, mayors have been sued. under these statutes. There's
I'm all for
many
suing
different
them. I'm all for suing the
instances
pants
where-
off them. I mean, I'm just unabashed fan of. After seeing what they've done
You're
in
not gonna
the last few years, the lawfare were being run by the left against decent people and finding whatever they can to haul them into court, to berate them, to impoverish them. I'm fine with this. I'm fine with whatever you're doing.
Well, right. Well,
I'm that guy. I am that guy.
When you sue the politicians personally, they personally financially will not be liable. Most
We'll
likely.
have some coverage,
but they're not. Right, they'll have coverage through the position. Okay, but they can be personally liable because they took that personal oath. Okay, so in other words,
some immunity.
They can be personally liable for their.
They have immunity on some level.
They're not immune. They're not immune.
Well, in some cases they are.
The politicians are not immune. Pardon me? The politicians are not immune from being sued.
No, that's not true. That's not. I mean,
they're not. They don't have immunity. They can be sued.
What I mean by that is that there's a liability immunity to some extent that these guys have. I'm trying to look for the right phrase in my brain, and I'm for whatever reason deciding that I meant to look it up before just to make sure I had that in my head. But I mean, they're just a limited ability for a person to be personally held liable, civilly or criminally, as a result of their job.
Listen, Victoria, a governor and a mayor and city councilman, okay, in a city or state, okay, allowing what happened to Schumacher, which I sued the city of Portland, if you recall, okay, allowing what happened to Schumacher. Well, I didn't have the knowledge back then. I lost the case and I didn't appeal it because I ran out of money.
They drove you out of business and then they left you impoverished.
That was the point.
That's sort of game, set, and match. And then you got sued, right?
What?
Didn't you get sued by some of the people who were terrorizing
I got sued by a booksman. I went from a wealthy guy down to nothing. I lost everything back in 2007.
And then came the crash.
Everything. Then came the crash. Yeah.
What happened to you? I mean, what did you do? I mean, I know people because I will.
Well, I went into real estate. I started doing a bunch of different things. It took me a long time to recover from the trauma, as well as my wife. Half our employees are still seeing counseling, okay, because of it. I mean, talking about major trauma, okay? Yeah, I've got people with death threats, people outside your door, following you when you drive home. I mean, this gets to you after 2 years every day, trust me. So we got to work. I would say that we went through the worst terrorism of any business in America because of the longevity of it. Now, there's terrorism on weekends and stuff like that. Okay. But we're talking 2 years, every day, zero law enforcement, and these people do it. And they are liable. These government officials, they violated their oath. They violated city ordinances. They're violating constitutional law. Okay? There's no courtroom that's not going to agree with me and our attorneys on that because we have the evidence.
Well, I wish you well.
Again,
I wish you well. I hope you win.
Yeah, so, and I can't guarantee that we'll be successful at this.
But you'll sue them anyway.
But I don't think what I'm trying to suggest to everyone is that there's no other avenue but this. Because nothing else is working, obviously, because if it was, we wouldn't be in this mess. Yeah. Hello? Tell me what's working. Tell me what the solution is. Someone out there in America, tell me what the solution is to this crime, the homelessness, and the violence. There isn't a solution because you got a bunch of radical leftists that are violating constitutional law. You know, that's what's going on here.
It takes a lot of money to do that, Greg. It takes a lot of money to do that. Sue them.
To which part? It does. Yeah. The plaintiffs, if a guy lost, if you own a building for, $100 million, right? And it's worth 1/10 of that. Okay. They can sue on their own, but the purpose of the multi-plaintiff lawsuit is to do shared costs among many people. Right? That's always just like the class action lawsuit, basically. But so that's the
Have you
advantage
talked, I
of
mean,
this
well,
whole
I'm
thing.
not going to ask you who you
Yeah.
got to, your angel investors here, but do you have you thought about the Silicon Valley? There are some right-leaning tycoons out there who, they used to call them tycoons, now they call them billionaires and oligarchs, but who might be able to give you some seed money for that. I mean, I recognize that this is just an uphill battle, and I know people have already given you money, but it would be nice to have some real deep pockets to go after. I mean, because it seems
Would be very nice to have that. And that's a good suggestion. I have not approached that. No. Maybe
yeah,
I'll talk to you about that.
I don't have anybody on speed dial. But.
But right now, I mean, if you go to our website, we're trying to gather donations, okay? Which we are, okay? I don't care if someone, right now we're trying to do two things. We're trying to get more plaintiffs, because we want more plaintiffs, okay? We want donations. And if you don't want to be a plaintiff or don't think or if you're not a plaintiff, but you just believe in the cause, then donate something. I don't care if it's $10. Just go to our website and donate it. It's totally anonymous. I've set my company up as an LLC. We're not a nonprofit. Okay. So any money that comes in, no one will know that you donate. Yeah. Because a lot of people don't want that. They want to be private. So it's totally discreet. So the only people are going to know are attorneys and restore law and order that you donated. Not even our attorneys necessarily, but so totally come. So, give $10, give $50, give to $100. It's going to go into the right place. I mean, it's going to go into to restore law and order functioning, to help pay for attorneys. The plaintiffs are helping pay attorneys. We're hitting this from all angles from getting finance and funding. But, it's restorelawandorder.com. And if you go on there, if you think that you might be a plaintiff, all you have to do is it'll take you 5 minutes, just fill out the little form on there, and we'll give you a call back. We'll just have a casual conversation. I'll have a casual conversation with you to see if you're even a potential plaintiff. Okay. And if you are, then you sit down and just for free, you just talk to one of our lead attorneys for half an hour.
Yeah.
We see where it goes.
I mean, your intention is to file lawsuits so that people are held accountable. You may not win them all, but you will keep the pressure on. I mean, that's the campaign, the pressure campaign, and it's a lawfare campaign. That is
what it is.
PR
That's what
and,
it is.
hey, we filed a lawsuit against X,
And,
Y, and Z because of X, Y, and Z, and the media might cover it. I've been shocked at how.
Well, the media that is covering it and has, is national. Okay. I've been on quite a few national. Yeah. Yeah. And, and I must say they're mostly conservative in nature. People ask me, why don't you go on CNN? Why don't you go on some of these more left thing? I said, I'd be more than glad to if they'd ask me. I'll tell you something about Oregon. Let me tell you something about Oregon. Okay. Do you realize that not one person, not one, including all the news stations, Steve Dunn, all of them, none of them will interview me, or they'll interview me, but they won't run it. Do you realize I've had zero publicity in Oregon since I started this? And people know the name Schumacher, not to be arrogant, but they know the name Schumacher. And they remember the Schumacher experience. We're doing this something to try to help businesses. And these yahoos are sitting back. They're not running it because they're a bunch of far left
did you know
radicals.
The other day, and I have to say this, I'm not sure when we're airing this on the Adult in the Room podcast, but it will be fairly soon. And recently there was campus protests and that sort of thing, the anti-Semites and the Hitler Youth walking the streets of Portland and basically menacing anyone with whom they had a disagreement. And of course, everything in between, from the river to the sea and everything else. And at one point, the Antifa folks, who are part and parcel of this whole movement because they're part of the sort of blob, the leftist blob that's funded by all sorts of NGOs, and George Soros affiliated as well as other entities, some foreign. They attacked her cameraman. This is a local reporter with her cameraman out there covering the event, covering the march or what have you. And she was literally having a panic attack. She was on camera. She was on camera holding her microphone, and it took her a couple of minutes to get a hold of herself. She was so completely freaked out by what had just happened. And so,
well, I mean,
then to the story, and that part is that, and then she called her editor. She just wanted what we're going to do a live shot, and she was you would not believe what just happened, blah 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 blah. And then she says, well, should I mention the attack or the assault? Oh, her editor was no need to do that. I'm like, well, why not? Why would that be? Why would you want to hide that from your viewers in Portland? I mean, it was just every week I do the West Coast column for PJ Media, and I gather all of these stories. And that was the one that really stood out to me because it's the most corrosive. It's the one that the editor chose not to include the information. And what happens when that happens is that people, A, they don't know about it, and B, they become inured to some of the stuff that goes on under their noses. And they need to know who it is who's not fighting for them or not at least giving the other side a fair shake. And people need to know it. And that's why I'm telling you.
Shame on the media in Oregon, okay? Including Lars Larson. Lars Larson interviews my attorney, but doesn't interview me. And Lars Larson talked to my attorney for an hour on the phone privately and came back. Gregg, he goes, what you're doing is solid legally. That's what Lars said. So he has my attorney on, but doesn't have me.
I mean, the attorney can answer the legal questions. I mean, that's.
But he can't answer the structure of this whole organization, which I developed. Yeah. I mean, it's just, I don't know. And then you have all your KGW and, KPT News, Business Journal won't even write about it.
That's something.
Look, I'm the third oldest business in Portland.
Greg,
give or take.
It's because you're outspoken. You're easy to dislike to these people. That's it. It's not anything that it's not that you're not the righteous party. It's not that you're the person who has been harmed. They would agree with all of that. They just go, well, he's just acerbic. I can't talk to him. He'll go off on us or something. I have no idea what their mindset is to the extent that they're worried if they got you on camera. But I will tell you this: you're just, if you're somebody who just calls the balls and strikes, and you have an opinion about it, and they like that.
I'm telling you like it is. Again, I lived it. The rest of these guys view it.
We've got some of the photos from the people out in front. We've played a few of the videos and of the people who were really literally menacing the people who came into your store, as well as just passersby. There was every reason for the police department in Portland to come to the defense of the people around this horrible terrorist occupation in front of your business for 2 years. That was only, it used to be that they'd only come after the day after Thanksgiving, kind of a thing, where the anti-fur people.
Oh, that was Fur-Free Friday. Yeah.
And it just grew into a daily event because, why not?
Well, what's happened here, it's quite interesting because of the Schumacher protest and Portlanders allowing this to happen and the government, if I may. Now the whole fur industry has crashed
by design globally because nobody has their back.
You know why? Because Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, Nordstrom, they all got after I went through what I did and I lost my case. It set a precedent for what could happen to retail operations when it comes to animal and radical terrorist groups. Okay, and I set the precedent. And the reason I lost the case is not because of lack of evidence. Is number one, I didn't select the right attorneys. Number two, I did not have the knowledge I do now. I was a business guy. I was a furrier. I was in the fur business, right? And I didn't have the knowledge I did now. But, I did sue Portland.
It's hard to sue Portland. It's hard to sue.
Had a radical leftist judge. Had a radical judge.
Surprise.
I mean, my fellow attorneys they were playing the video coverage that you have in front of the judge when he said these people are just expressing their First Amendment right. Are you kidding me? They're throwing firebombs in my store. That's expressing your First Amendment right. But this stuff, it's unbelievable. It really is unbelievable. And, what's going on out in Portland and San Francisco and all the rest of these places, it's all because the government is not enforcing the laws. And no one will convince me any differently.
Oh, no, I think that's true. No, I think if they did enforce the law, they would not have provided the entree for all of this stuff to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, you hit it right on the head.
You're absolutely right.
I mean, as far as being public on this, you might recall, I don't know if you recall, but you actually came down to one of my protests, Victoria.
I did. I do. Yes.
You came down. Yeah, you came down during the heat of the protest. You're the only person that was on a radio show, which was a prestige radio show back then, and you did. And you came down and stayed for hours, and I think you were in disbelief of what was really happening. But you were telling the truth on your radio show back then, and that's what I admire so much about you, because you were telling the truth, and you were being a radio host the way you should. You were reporting the news.
And they were not doing that. The radio or the news media were mostly ignoring what the larger issues were there. One of the things that we tried to do, and we had everything donated, we had everything ready to go. And we were going to go do a hamburger cookout in front of your store on the sidewalk. Because if they can camp out there, then so can I. And I had the barbecue, I had the cook, I had the food, I had everything donated. And the general manager said, no, we couldn't do it. And why not? By the way, it's a great story. It's funny as hell that we are doing that in front of the protesters, the animal rights protesters. And I think what we give is we empower Gregg Schumacher a little bit more and other business owners who are terrorized by this. And he said no, because he's a coward.
Yeah, that would have been great. I mean, that was such a great idea.
May I say that again?
Such a great idea. Because they're against meat, obviously, and beef and poultry. The animal rights groups are against beef, poultry, all food products, all leather, wool, all those products are against pet ownership, no dogs, no horses, no rabbits, no cats. They're against animal research to cure diseases for your animals and humans. If you remember, when you take your dog to a vet, those prescription dogs most likely were tested on mice and et cetera to get developed. So if you have a pet and you take them to the vet, you give them a prescription drug, thanks to the animal rights or the animal research community. Okay. Well, before I leave, I want to say one more thing, okay? And I want to say this to your audience. What you're seeing on TV every night right now, the riots and et cetera. Let me tell you a little bit more about these people, okay? Okay, these people, in many cases, and this happened to me, are paid protesters, okay? All right. Number two, they're not in it for the cause.
Oh, it's straight.
Okay? Remember that.
It's what do you call it?
No, well, they're not in it for the cause. And so, in other words, the protesters and the terrorists that were at Schumacher's went to protest the war after that. They went and protested some of that. So they do that. Now, what they are, these are rejects of life. You remember when you were a kid and there was always that weird kid in school? Okay, that's what these guys are. Okay, these are the weird guys. They're even weird looking. I'm sorry to say.
Craig,
liberals are just weird.
Man. You're trying to garner sympathy, not throw it away, dude.
But you take these people, they're dysfunctional people, okay? Obviously they are, to do the things that they do. Who's going to stand out in front of a Schumacher protest day after day in, okay, for 2 years, and protest a furrier or terrorize a furrier? You think you have something better to do with your time. But no, this is what these guys do. And what it is because they are socially dysfunctional, follow me on this, they're socially dysfunctional, this is a happening for them. This is a belonging, okay? These are the rejects of life. So when they get up there and get a microphone and they say, kill Schumacher, okay? Everyone's clapping and chanting for them, all the rest of the terrorists and stuff. They get recognition Okay. Then afterwards, let me tell you what they do afterwards. I know this for a fact because our security, we track all of them. I'll track all of it. So after the protests and after the terrorism, what they do is they go to the local bar, they go drink. Okay. They have fun. Okay. The guys are looking to get laid. The gals are looking to get laid. Okay. They party. And what this is it's a social function. That's all it is. It's a social. This has nothing to do with the cause. Don't get confused with like the news reports it every day. Oh, they're in for this, they're Israel. These people don't give a shit about any of that. Okay? They don't care. They're just radical leftists. So they're going to be protest. They protest. They just really protest. One thing, they protest another. It's a social
what you're describing
dysfunction.
Is the fact that they're chaos agents, and the idea behind the Saul Alinsky stuff and was that there was only the fight. There's only the revolution. There is no there. They only want to disrupt. That,
That's
it
correct.
is so stated. And indeed, when Andy No wrote his book about Unmasked, the Antifa folks, what he found was there were people during the 2020 Portland riots who he described much the same way you're describing, although he didn't call them losers.
Yeah, exactly.
But he did say that they were people on the fringes. They were.
He does know them as well as I do.
Anyway. He knows them pretty well, but he was just being nicer, okay? And you be you, Greg.
Right.
He'll be him. And bottom line, it was just there were a lot of people who were mentally confused in those riots, and
you think so? A couple of these guys lit themselves on fire in front of my store and died.
What? In front of your store?
Hello? Yes.
I
A guy lit himself in front. He's in front of. There's another furrier called
I went
Schumacher
over there
Furs. I don't know
too.
if you remember that.
Mm-hmm. I remember that guy.
Okay. Well,
that guy
right
did.
after
He set himself on fire in front of Unger Furs. Yeah.
He set himself on fire. And listen to the police department. The police department went to their trunk to get the fire extinguisher and grabbed the wrong extinguisher and gave something to inflame it even more.
Whoa.
And squirted the guy.
Really? I did not remember that.
Yeah.
That is insane.
Yeah. It's true stuff. Yeah, and that's how great the Portland police is.
Well, now they're all politicians.
Well, then, talking about these people being a little bit crazy.
Said you.
Yeah, I would say so.
You said?
Huh?
Go ahead. I think some of them are nuts too, but I'm just too nice to say that.
I'm not nice anymore at all. I just tell the truth. Okay, I don't care how it comes up, and I really don't care what people think of me.
You can't.
Okay, because I am what I am. I lived what I lived, and I know what I know. Okay, and I know a lot more than 99% of these people are recording this stuff. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, they're talking from a viewpoint of the outside viewer. I'm talking internally living. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Get it. No, I get it. When they're camping outside your house and they're threatening you and they're tormenting you and they're scaring the crap out of your wife. Yeah.
They went after my kids. They went after my grandkids.
I believe it. Of course. I do. That's why. Yeah. I mean.
Okay. I explained that to your family over the dinner table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because one mess to another
still married.
mess.
You're still happily married, right? Everything's okay? Must have been horrible.
Yep. It's been difficult. It was full of stress on the marriage.
Yeah, you go broke and then you lose. And then you don't get your justice. Okay. Yeah. The terrorists win.
I'm going to look at this is not about Schumacher Furs, what I'm doing. And it's not about Gregg Schumacher. It really isn't. This is about my experience and the ability. I kind of think, I'm a true believer in God. Okay. And I kind of think I went through this horrible experience in my life, losing everything and all that for a reason. I think the reason is to come back and try to help other people. And that's what I'm doing. I mean, I don't want people and businesses to go through what I did because it's just disastrous. Okay. And it's disastrous, not just your finances, but emotionally, psychologically, everything. And, I don't want other people to go through that. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. Okay. And whether it's going to work, I can know, like my attorneys go, we can't guarantee the success of any lawsuit. Okay. But we're trying this avenue because we don't see any other avenue that will work, okay? And we also think that we will be successful, but we can't guarantee it. There will probably be a settlement to the businesses. At least the businesses, I would say the scenario will probably pan out. There will be a settlement. We'll have the media's attention big time on this when we expose all these radical leftists with our evidence, and hopefully we'll damage them, and hopefully we'll set a precedent. Hopefully we'll set some type of precedents for future candidates to be scared to run, because if they want to carry out the same lawlessness, then the same thing will happen to them.
Gregg Schumacher, thank you so much for coming on the Adult in the Room podcast. I don't know why I just had a vapor lock there. I apologize. My best to you.
Well, that's okay.
You take care. And thank you for coming on the Adult in the Room podcast.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Adult in the Room podcast. To keep the programs you like to listen to, please rate this podcast with a fantastic 5 stars on your Apple Podcast app every time you listen. And give me a great review. Plus, of course, subscribe to the podcast. It makes a difference with the big tech algorithm and the big tech oligarchs, and it makes us easier to find. Please get in touch with me on all the big tech stuff. Yeah, we're still there. Using the names Victoria Taft or the Adult in the Room podcast on MeWe, Parler, Minds, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thanks to 1ACast for imaging, editing, and production. The fantastic song is Gospel by the March 4th Band of Portland, Oregon. Music for Antifa versus Mike Strickland is Ride or Die by Raps by RC. The Adult in the Room podcast is also a production of Flamingo Road Studios. Remember, head up, heart out, and strive to be the adult in the room. Till next time, mischief managed.